Good morning. So today I'm going to go over Evans again. And at the end today I want to come back to this distressing argument that suppose you look inside your mind and you see there, this is a little bit echoey, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Hello? That's better. Okay. Suppose you look inside your own mind, you see there that you're thinking about water. Yes? You remember this example? And then you know by the causal theory, you could only be thinking about water if there was water out there and you were causally connected to it. Yeah. Therefore, just by looking inside your own mind, you can tell that there is such a thing as water and that you're causally connected to it. That's kind of a distressing argument. Yeah? It brings out one of the ways in which the causal theory seems to blow up your knowledge of your own, the usual picture of your knowledge of your own mind. It seems to be kind of interdependent with knowledge of the environment and the causal theory. So I want to come to that last, these kind of inferences from mind to world. In the middle, I want to look a bit at Evans's positive picture, the details of Evans's positive picture of how proper names work. But I want to start out with some really big picture ideas about knowledge and reference and causality that we were looking at last time. So suppose you ask, what's language for? What is the point of having a language in the first place? I mean, why bother? Any suggestions? To communicate. Yeah, to tell other people what you're thinking. Yep. Though, yeah, what you're thinking had better be interesting. You see what I mean? There's an answer that's related. It depends exactly what you mean by communicate. There's a related answer that's often kind of in the background in the philosophical literature here, which is, suppose you get a flock of birds that are subject to attack by predators, or they're looking for food the whole time. What good does it do them if they develop some kind of signaling system, if they communicate, if they squawk to each other? Well, it's kind of obvious what good it would do you if you're a bird in such a flock. Yes? I mean, if a predator comes by and you don't see the predator, but someone else squawks, then you can tell there's a predator there, right? It's for you as if you'd seen the predator yourself. It's kind of a long-range perception. Yeah. So, if you gloss communication as transmitting knowledge, yeah, like if I'm saying, "Is he coming? Is he coming?" and you can see around the door and I can't, yeah, you can tell me, and then it's for me as if I'd seen him myself. Yeah, yeah. So, of course, you can use language for a million different things. You can use language to tell jokes, or exaggerate, or boast, or play bridge. But maybe the basic use of language is to communicate knowledge. It's just to tell other people how things are. But if you put it like that, then the next question is, well, what's knowledge? And if the point of language is to communicate knowledge, then what is knowledge? What is knowledge? This is epistemology, right? How do you define what knowledge is? Is that right? Right. Okay, so what is knowledge? Well, actually everybody used to agree in the answer. If you know that something's so, then it's got to be so, right? You can't know that there are tigers under your bed unless there actually are tigers under your bed. Yeah? And you've got to believe the thing if you know it to be true. Yes? So everybody agrees in that. But just having a true belief isn't enough for knowledge, because you might get it right, but it might just be an accident. Yeah? I mean, if you just make a lucky guess, if someone says, if you're guessing someone's weight or something, you just take a shot in the dark and say, I bet it's this. That might be a true belief, but it's not knowledge. So you want it to be not an accident that you're getting it right. Okay, there you are. That was quick, right? That's epistemology, right? You, you can torture over the details, of course, but that's basically it, right? Melissa? Right. How many of you guys have done some class in epistemology or Descartes or something like that? Some of you. Okay, well, keep me honest. Yeah, that's right, isn't it? Yeah. So then what happens in epistemology is everyone settles down for a scrap about what this means. It isn't an accident, right? And all the rows are about what it means. It isn't an accident. But the basic answer is that it isn't an accident is a causal notion. That if you believe that it's so, and the cause of your belief is that it is so, then it's not an accident that you're getting it right. Yep. So knowledge is a causal notion. That's why perception is a causal notion. And that's why reference is a causal notion. Because perception and reference are ways of getting knowledge, defined by their role in getting knowledge. And knowledge is causally defined. If I guess your weight, and I get it right because I just saw the reading in an instrument, what happened was that your weight caused that reading in the instrument, and that caused me to make my judgment. Yeah, that's what knowing is. Whereas if it's just a shot in the dark, if there's no causal connection, then it's not knowledge. That's all right so far? Well, we've just done epistemology. There you are. Now we can move back to reference. Any qualifications, comments? Yes? How do you come to believe false things? Well, that's when something causes you to form the belief, but it's not the fact. Yeah? So if what causes me to form a belief about what time it is a stopped clock, yeah, then it's not the time that's causing me to form that belief. It's this pesky stopped clock. Yeah, nothing to do with what time it really is. Yes, very good. That goes back to the first comment. You can just use this non-specific notion of communication, right, and say, look, I'm just going to share my beliefs with you, right? Who cares about whether they're right or not? Yeah. But the question is, what would be the point of that? I mean, I do have a senior colleague who will just tell me what he's been thinking about this week's politics, you know, just because I guess he just thinks I might like to know. You see what I mean? You know, here's what I think about the latest moves in the Congress or whatever. And, well, you know, that's very interesting. But, right. Right. Okay, let me give you an example that, so if you had a reasonable belief, that'd be worth sharing, right? Yeah. There is an example, have you guys come across the lottery paradox? Lottery? No? Okay, suppose you have a ticket in a lottery. Yep, now follow me very closely here. You have a ticket in a lottery, and let's suppose there are 100 tickets. Yep. Are you going to win? Probably not, right? Is that right? What? Somebody, well, that's the spirit, right? Somebody will, yeah. Yeah, and it might be you, right? But the odds are 99 to 1 against. Yeah? So I have a probable, you have a probable opinion that you're not going to win. Yes? Because after all, the odds are pretty good. Now, is that knowledge? Do you know you're not going to win? No, you don't know you're not going to win. Right? Otherwise, you wouldn't buy the ticket. That's why what you say is the right spirit. Yeah. You don't know you're not going to win, but the odds are 99 to 1 against. Yep. Okay, you say, well, 99 to 1 against isn't very strong odds, right? Let's make it, suppose there are 1,000 tickets. Suppose there are 1 billion tickets. Suppose there are a Google of tickets. Yeah, suppose it's some really big number, right? Are you likely to win? No, the likelihood of you winning is vanishingly small. Do you know you're not going to win? No, right? So it's not reasonable belief here. Yep. I mean, sorry, there is reasonable belief here that you're not going to win, but you can make the odds as high as you like in favor of the belief. It's still not going to be knowledge. Yes? But, and here's the key thing. Does anyone have the right to say to you, you're not going to win? If I just asserted to you on the basis of your Google to 1 chances, you're not going to win, that would clearly be wrong. Yeah? If you're going to assert something, you require knowledge, not just reasonable belief. That's an argument due to Williamson. I see what you think. Yep. Probably is fine. Probably is fine. You can say you're probably not going to win, and you know that, right? But the question is language in its most basic way used for anything but transmitting knowledge? And what I'm saying is, in that situation, you don't have the right to assert, just flat out, you are not going to win. If I say to you definitively, you are not going to win, then that would suggest that I've got I know something about how the thing is fixed. Not just that I know that the odds are 1 in 1,000,000 against. You see what I mean? Yeah. So what you're saying is right, but it just brings out that if you're going to tell people stuff, that presupposes that you know it. Yeah. You only have the right to tell people that things are so if you know them to be so. That's just the way we talk. That's just the way language works. Yes? A further distinction. Well, there is already a distinction between true belief and knowledge. Yeah. So yeah, there's a further distinction in the sense that we can also make a distinction between very probable true belief and knowledge. The belief can be as probable as you like, but still not be knowledge. Yeah. That's what the lottery thing shows. There you go, that's epistemology. And what is lacking in the case of the lottery thing? I mean, if you have this very, very probable belief, what you lack is a causal connection, right? It's not that you have some insight into, if you already know that the lottery's been drawn and the person hasn't won, then there's a causal connect and you can say you didn't win. Mere probable opinion without the causal connection is not enough for knowledge, and it's not enough for assertion. Okay? So here's a way to think of it. If I say, look, that chair is grey, I don't say that's a great achievement, but right, that's grey, right? Right, okay. Now, how did I know that? Okay, over there you got the chair, over here you got the knowledge. How come? Sorry? There's a causal connection, very good. And what is the name of that causal connection? Perception. I saw the chair, right? So perception is whatever gives you knowledge of your surroundings. Perception is whatever causally hooks you up to your surroundings in such a way as to give you knowledge of it. If you're asking what perceptual systems does an animal have, what you're asking is what ways does that animal have of getting knowledge of its surroundings? So that's a question about how the animal is causally hooked up to your surroundings. And if you're asking which objects am I perceiving, that's the same as the question, which objects am I causally hooked up to in such a way that I can get knowledge of them? Yep, yep. Animals can misperceive things, but all the time is a bit strong, but anyway. But probable opinion isn't enough for knowledge. Possible. Well, not if you actually see it. If you see it, then you can rule it out. Sorry? See, that's too fancy. That's the kind of question humans ask. Well, no, it doesn't. Right? Just take this very slowly. Suppose you're an animal. I mean, actually, let me not put it like that. So, suppose we have an animal, right? And a predator or some food or something comes towards it, and it acts in the appropriate way. Yeah. Is the animal saying, "Hey, I saw something. Therefore, probably there is something there"? That's not what goes on. Animals don't think about themselves seeing things. That's the kind of stuff that humans do. Yeah? Animals don't say, "Well, I saw that," or "Did you see that?" Right? They don't talk about their seeing, they just do it. Yeah? That's right. But suppose the animal does see the thing and acts appropriately. It didn't reflect to itself, "Hey, I saw that. That gives me good evidence that the thing is there." It just saw it and it acted. I promise you. I mean, offer a dog a steak. The dog does not dither and say, "Well, it seems to be a steak." So, it just sees the thing and acts. That's right. Well, the difference in the mental state is that one knows and the other one doesn't. And what makes one knowledge and the other not is just the causal connect to the stuff outside. It's not that there's some difference at the level of fancy reflection of what's going on. That's the mistake that humans characteristically make. In fact, that's the mistake that human philosophers characteristically make. Right? Melissa? This is a loaded question. Okay, so I claim that if you're looking at an animal and saying, does it have perceptual systems, you're asking, what kind of causal hooked upness does it have to its environment? So I said, look, if I know the chair is grey, then one way that can be is I saw it, right? Perception is the intermediary between the greyness of the chair and my knowledge. But suppose you tell me the chair is grey, but I can't see the chair, but I ask you, what colour is the chair? And you say to me, that chair is grey. Do I then get knowledge of what colour the chair is? Hello? Yes, of course you do. Otherwise, otherwise there wouldn't have been any point in my asking you. You see what I mean? Yeah. Because that's why we talk like, that's why we exchange views, right? That we swap knowledge. So assertion is like perception. It's a way you can get causally hooked up to the external object without seeing it. And that can give you knowledge of it. Yep. Yep. 1, 2. I don't see why not. I mean, you have to take someone's word. Yeah, that's true. You do have to take someone's word. But you know, if someone stops you and asks you what time is it, they're not going to say, "Well, I don't like the look of him." Yeah. Yeah. You could hit a prankster, right? You could always have a hallucination, yeah. But in the case in which you're not wrong, you really are getting causally hooked up to the facts, and that's why the exercise is worth doing. There's a gap between the causal connection and what? Well, it's kind of long range, right? But that's the great value of it, yeah? And let me just... when I was 9 years old, someone gave me a diary. A friend of my father's gave me a diary in which he'd written this piece of advice. Son, never believe anything that anyone says to you. The kind of wisdom of age there. And I think that was really bad advice, right? I mean, if you never believed anything that anyone said to you, you couldn't learn the language in the first place. Yeah, I mean, if you're like 2 years old and you're trying to find out about what the names of the colours are, And someone says to you, well, that's orange and that's red and that's yellow. And you're like, no. Yeah. Then you really can't get moving. Yeah. I mean, everything about language and culture and civilization depends on people trusting each other. Yeah. And it depends on us getting knowledge from this system. There's got to be a way of having information flow causally from person to person about the world out there. You see what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, there's another question. The truth of perception. That's right. Well, it's the same subjective, not according to the causal theory, because what's the content of your perception, right? It's whatever's causing you to be that, whatever's causally affecting you, yeah? That's what fixes what your perception's about. So my perception's about the chair. If your thing is a hallucination, then that's not being caused by a chair, right? So your perception can't be a perception of the chair because it's not caused by it. So they can't be exactly similar because they're about different things. Yeah. So what makes a perception of a particular object is that that's the object that's causally affecting you in such a way as to give you knowledge of it. And what makes an assertion about a particular object is that that's the object I'm currently hooked up with in such a way I can now transmit knowledge of it. Yep. Yeah, cause your perception causally hooks you up. Yeah.
And in your example of like when I ask you what the color of the chair is and you say gray.
Yes.
So you have put your perceptually hooked up to the color.
Right, I'm hooked up to the chair. Let's suppose you can't see it. Let's suppose I've got something in my hand, right? Right? You can't see it.
So
Okay.
when you tell me that the color is gray, does that
Very good. Yeah. I guess it does, doesn't it? I mean, suppose, look, don't take my word for it. Right? I say, this is a card, right? You can say to everyone else, that's a card. Suppose I whisper it to you, right? This is a card. You can say to everyone else, that's a card he's got there. That card is... If you don't trust me, you might just say, look, let me see. But really, if I'm just telling you about it, that's what I mean about having to trust people. I mean, how do you know there's such a person as Obama? Yeah? Yeah. That's right. I mean, how can you refer, well, I mean, if you've never been to, I don't know, Papua New Guinea, how do you know there's such a place? How can you refer to such a place? But we do that kind of stuff the whole time. Yeah, you troublemaker. Right. Yeah. Like what, sorry? Yes. The information might degenerate. I agree. I mean, there are cases in which you might want to say, look, I want to see for myself. Yeah? I agree that there's some sense in which perception is definitive. Yeah. But still in all, listening to other people is something we can't do without. It's completely indispensable. Yeah. In some cases, seeing for yourself might trump it. Yeah. If you say to me, Melissa's not here, I say, look, I can see perfectly well she's here, right? If you don't mind me using you as an example, right? Then, you know, my perception trumps what you're telling me. I might think you're just completely authoritative, yeah? But it would be a very unusual situation if that made me believe I was having a hallucination. You see what I mean? Perception always trumps people telling you. But nonetheless, people telling you is indispensable. You couldn't have anything like your current beliefs, your current ways of thinking, unless you were trusting what people were telling you. Okay? So, what's reference? Referring to an object is being in a position to transmit knowledge about it. So that means you've got to be causally connected to it. Reference to an object requires a causal connection with the object, in virtue of which you're in a position to transmit knowledge about it. So that's why the causal theory of reference must be right. Okay. I mean, I should back off a little bit and say these are obviously large claims I'm making that need a lot of qualification. Yeah. But something like this underlying picture is very common, I think, in the literature. Okay. Now, what we were talking about last time was the distinction between the way that when you see a bag, say, the distinction between the way the bag is affecting you and the way the sun is causally affecting you. Remember all that? Yeah. So I think the sum up was that the illuminant, or if you're looking at it through spectacles or a telescope or a mirror, they're causally affecting your perception of it. But you're more you're sensitive in more complex ways to the way the object that you're seeing is than you are to the way the sun is or to the way the spectacles are. So that you've got something like this. So long as the object was F, it would have seemed F. If it hadn't been F, it wouldn't have seemed F. And the more F it is, the more F it seems. The less F it is, the less F it seems. And there's a whole range of these characteristics, like size, shape, color, and so on, for the object you're directly seeing. But there isn't a whole lot of these characteristics for the illuminant or the spectacles you're wearing. Is that okay? Is that not okay? So reference is when you've got that kind of direct connect. If I'm talking to, so suppose you tell me about Sally. I've never met Sally, but you tell me a whole bunch of stuff about Sally. Then there are different things that are causally involved here. There's the person Sally. There's a telephone line down which you're telling me all about Sally. There's you yourself. But when I'm thinking about what you said about Sally, I'm getting a whole bunch of reports that are differentially sensitive to the details of how Sally is, not to the details of how you are or how the telephone line is. Okay, there you go. That's reference and knowledge. That cleared everything up? It's so undermining when you laugh. Right. Okay, the way it's often used is, the way I tend to use it in this class, is that reference is when you've got a simple proper name. When you've got a definite description, it doesn't strictly speaking refer to anything, right? It's a quantifier. It's not a referring term at all. Nonetheless, when you say there's a unique F and anything F is G, if that's true, then it's got to be because there is some unique F. So you can call that unique F the denotation. Yeah. So denotation is kind of a facsimile of reference. Yeah. That's the way I use it. Kripke, I think, uses reference and denotation interchangeably. Is that right? I think he does use them as if they meant just the same thing. It's pretty confusing. Evans, I can't remember how Evans uses denotation, if he uses it in my strictly correct way, or if he uses it in Kripke's loose and sloppy way. My guess would be he'd use it correctly, but he might have been kind of sloppy with it. Yeah. I'd have to look at it again. But if you look at it, the thing is, usually if you look at what someone's saying with that thing with that distinction in mind, it's pretty obvious what they mean. Yeah, that's the important thing. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Because if you put it in terms of semantic value, the most basic semantic value are these quantifier terms and predicates in there. Yeah. It doesn't really, you don't really need to say it's got an object as its semantic value. It's just a kind of accident that it has an object. There's an object there on whose characteristics the truth or falsity of the sentence depends. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Napoleon. This is Napoleon meeting the Sphinx, right? That's Napoleon on the left and the Sphinx on the right. Okay. So Evans has this example of Napoleon where he says, suppose, 1814 is like Napoleon's very late career, after he'd more or less managed the unification of Europe, then had been sent to jail, and then came back to fight at Waterloo. And Evans' example is, suppose some impersonator took over the great general's place after he was released from jail and coming to fight his last battles at Waterloo. Yes? In that case, who are we talking about when we say Napoleon? Are we referring to the late impersonator or the earlier general? Evans says all the descriptions that the typical historian has that relate to Napoleon would be dominantly of the earlier general. Right? This was the guy who became famous, the great strategist and all that. Is that all right? Yep. Okay. So when we say Napoleon fought at Waterloo, that would express a false belief, because the word Napoleon refers to the dominant source of your cluster of belief about Napoleon, the person who was impersonated at Waterloo. On the other hand, suppose that when the person, the young corporal was just starting out in 1793, and then someone, what's the word I want, coshed him and threw him away in a ditch and took over his military position, and then went on to win all these great battles, yeah, to show all his brilliance as a tactician. And now we're talking about Napoleon. Well, the dominant source of our cluster of beliefs is the impersonator, not the original guy. So then when we say Napoleon, we're talking about the impersonator. So if you think of the kind of Serlian cloud of descriptions, Evans' idea is this notion of the dominant source of the cluster of descriptions is the important thing. That's what fixes reference. Yes? About Wellington, yes. Without any of those beliefs being true. Is that right? Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay, let's cut to the chase here. Is that fairly obvious? You've got this at this point? Or what this is saying here? Pause me if that is not fairly obvious, because I'll skip if you don't. Okay. Actually, the stuff about twin Earth, right? If you switch from Earth to twin Earth, the dominant source of your cluster of beliefs about water can shift, right? So Evans doesn't really explicitly make the point, but it works for twin Earth too. There are a couple of examples that Imogen Dickey gave quite recently that I think are of Melissa's type. So suppose you live in a village in which there's a 2-year-old girl, and the astrologer makes lots of predictions about what this 2-year-old will do, right? This 2-year-old will save the village. This 2-year-old will make us famous. This 2-year-old will, I don't know, invent TV or whatever it is, right? Then what the astrologer says might be a bunch of hokum, but still in all, it can be that that's what most people care about this little girl. Right, she might be famous in the village as the subject of all these great predictions. Yeah, but so that would be an example where most of the beliefs are false. Yep. I'm not going to join you in saying anything negative about the Dalai Lama, but, but anyway, carry on. Okay, and we can suppose for the sake of the example that those beliefs are not true. Okay, just for the sake of the example. Yes, right, that would be exactly the kind of case, yeah, where there are lots of predictions, yeah, and those are the ones that everybody cares about. The actual facts nobody knows about. So whatever the dominant source is of all these beliefs, it's presumably not the person themselves. Yeah, or Dickey is another example. Chaucer. Suppose this is not, I think, actually what happened with Chaucer. But suppose that the inventor of the printing press, in whenever it was, 1300 or something, has by the time of the Middle Ages, there are lots of stories elaborated about him. Yeah, you know, he's supposed to have had fantastical powers. You know, he could fly. You know, he could read people's minds. That kind of stuff. He had X-ray vision. So you might get a whole bunch of mythological stories built up, but you're still talking about Chaucer. Yeah, that's the kind of example. Yeah. So there are real troubles for Evans's account. There are real troubles for Kripke's account too. The trouble for Kripke's account are these examples like Madagascar or Napoleon, where Evans really deals with these examples very well, because Madagascar or Napoleon, the dominant source of your beliefs about the thing seems to be what's fixing reference. People who told Marco Polo that's Madagascar, the cluster of beliefs that they associated with the name Madagascar would have had as its dominant source part of the mainland. Once Marco Polo started using it, the dominant source of the cluster of beliefs associated with the name Madagascar would have been the island. Yeah. So Evans really catches that. Yeah. Reference is fixed by whatever's the dominant source of your cluster of beliefs, not by the historical origin of the use of the name. I went very fast over that. Is that too fast, or is that... I can't quite tell if I'm going too fast or too slow. Yes? Exactly, that's right. With Spot, dear old Spot, right? Evans seems to get that right, and Kripke seems to get that wrong. Kripke gets it wrong because what matters for the reference of Spot is not the original dubbing ceremony plus a chain of reference. Otherwise, you'd never be able to refer to the new Spot. Yeah. But what shifts in the Spot story is what's the dominant source of your cluster of beliefs. Yeah. So Evans really seems to get that right. But then there are these examples like Melissa gave or that Imogen Dickey gives that seem to show, no, actually, Kripke was right, because in these cases, you seem to care about what the original dubbing, what was going on in the original dubbing. It was that 2-year-old girl. It was this little boy, the Dalai Lama, or it was this man Chaucer that was being dubbed. We've got a chain going back there. So I have to tell you that the current situation in theory of reference seems to be one of significant uncertainty. There is really no answer in the back of the book about this. It is not quite clear what is going on, why we get so many different cases with proper names. Causal chains and associated sets of descriptions, dubbing ceremonies, these all really seem to be the important notions. But how exactly they fit together is really very difficult to see. I think that's the state of the art. That's my understanding. Yeah, I think there is no, I'm not aware of any further brand new idea that we could have here. Okay. Okay, so that's all right? Yep, okay. Knowledge of your own thoughts. Remember that picture, here's my mind over here, there's the world out there. There's my knowledge of my own mind. I have that with certainty. I know whether I'm thinking, and I know what I'm thinking. I know whether I'm thinking the same or a different thought as before. And I said that all gets blown up by the causal theory. You remember that? That really does seem to get blown up. And one way is this argument about water. You know you're thinking about water, then by the causal theory there must be such a stuff as water. So you can know there's such a stuff as water just by reflection on your own mind. How can that be? That doesn't make any sense. And it's not as if it's only water. Suppose that you look inside your mind and find that you're thinking about Gödel. You say, I'm thinking about Gödel. I haven't thought about him for ages. Dear old Gödel. So what goes on is You have a particular thought about Gödel, so you know that you're thinking about Gödel, so therefore Gödel must exist. How do you do that? You looked inside your own mind and you found out that there was such a person as Gödel. Yes? Unicorns, yes, right. Is that until the unicorns exist? Well, presumably not, yeah, right. Similarly for Santa Claus, right? You don't want to have to say, well, I can look inside my own mind and see that I'm thinking about Santa Claus. Yeah. Yeah, that really is a puzzle. But you see the point the other way. Yeah. How could you couldn't be thinking? I mean, another way to put it is to say the uncompromising reply to your remark would be to say you can't be thinking about unicorns because there's no such thing. Whatever you're thinking about is not unicorns. That's what the causal theory says. You can't have meaning without reference. Whatever you're doing when you're saying the word unicorn to yourself, you can't call that thinking because there's no such thing as it being true or it being false. Suppose you think, well, unicorns can fly. Is that right or wrong? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really make any sense, right? That's because you don't have a properly formed thought there at all. That's the uncompromising reply. Whatever you're doing, I wouldn't call that thinking. Yeah? Kurt, yeah, the reply Kurt. Yeah. Okay, there is a gentler, you see this is a big problem. Yeah, this really seems to follow from the causal theory. Yeah, and it's quite general. It's not just something special about Gödel or water. Yeah. I've gone from very good. Okay. One way of diagnosing this is to say you could only get from having the thought about Gödel to knowing that you're thinking about Gödel if you already knew Gödel existed. That's what you're saying? Yeah, that's very good. That this is actually, I guess, Jim Pryor, Crispin Wright, and Michael McKinsey in different ways have argued this, over this idea. That what's going on here is that this is a way of saving the causal theory. You can really only have knowledge of your own mind in these cases if you already know something about what's in the world around you. Yeah? So this is still destabilizing the kind of common sense picture of your own mind, the knowledge of your own mind, as the stuff over here as opposed to the stuff out there. It says you can really only know what your thoughts are if you know something about what's in the world out there, if you know that Gödel and water and so on exist. And then this doesn't establish that Gödel exists. There's a slightly delicate sense in which it presupposes that Gödel exists. Yep. Yep. You can only imagine things that you've seen before. That's a claim that's often made. Yeah, I mean Locke and so on claimed that. Descartes, yeah. Very good. Even in the hallucination case, there is that composite object, that composite of real objects. Yeah, that you're talking about. Yeah. Well, if you follow this model, in the case of the unicorns or whatever, you have to know that the thing exists. And what in order to do this kind of reasoning, in order to know about your own thoughts, right? In order to know about your own thoughts about the unicorn, you have to know that on your picture that there are horses out there, that there are horns out there. Yeah, you have to have that knowledge of the world in order to have this knowledge of your own thought. Yeah. So, well, what you were saying was it is necessary that they exist, right? That's right. Yeah, that's right. And the composite is just, well, it's just a kind of construct out of those things. So long as they exist, you might be in business. Yeah. I agree. It's not obvious that it's correct, but it's a very interesting line of analysis on what's going on here with the unicorns, how you can have knowledge of your own thoughts of unicorns. In the case in which it's not a unicorn, you just need to know that the thing exists, and then you can say, oh, no, I'm thinking about that. One, two. Uh-huh. Different notions of existence, yeah. Yeah. Right. They subsist, yes, very good. Yeah. It's pretty radical. Okay, it might even fit. You might, if you work this out, it might fit with actually the last suggestion. You might say subsistence is what these composites have. Yeah, like you or I aren't just composites, if you see what I mean. So we really exist, but a unicorn is put together from real stuff. So in that sense, it subsists. Yeah. I wouldn't want to rule that out. Yeah, it is an interesting line of thought. So you could keep this picture that's on the screen right now, yeah, but say that you've got knowledge of subsistence or something out there, yeah. Of course, the thing is you're going to have causal connections between you and the subsisting things if you're going to think about them. Okay, but how could it be causally connected to you if it doesn't exist but only subsists? Okay, but this is deep metaphysics, right? I mean, there's a lot of room for maneuver here. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sure. Yes, that's right. That's right. That I wouldn't want to quarrel with, but it's consistent with this picture on the screen. That's right, but well, it blows up that contrast. It says you only have knowledge of your own mind because you have knowledge of the world. Knowing that knowing what's going on in your mind depends on knowing what's going on out there. That's there's a sense in which that's correct. That's right. There's got to be such a thing in order for you to know that you're thinking about it. That's right. But the causal theory really challenges that. That's the whole problem, right? We said it seems in the face of it like something kind of meaning without reference. But in the causal theory, what gives meaning to those primitive signs, to the simple names, is the causal connection. There's no way. I mean, you can say, well, I've got a cloud of descriptions or something here without reference. No problem about that. But for simple names, you don't have meaning without reference on the causal theory. And what I began with about knowledge in the causal theory is really there's a lot of momentum behind the causal theory. You see what I mean? It's not just one cookie theory. Because these intuitive connections between knowledge, communication, and reference and causation are so strong, it's not something that can be just brushed aside. It seems likely it's going to be part of any final account. Quickly, yeah. Can you give us a soundbite? Yep. You actually, well, you can give a description of something that doesn't exist. No argument about that. The point about these kind of thoughts, like thinking about Gödel or thinking about water, is that they're not analysed by descriptions, right? We're taking it that these are basic proper names. So I just want to make one last comment, which is Descartes' meditations. How many of you know Descartes' meditations? How many? Okay, most but not all. Okay, well, Descartes found himself alone with his thoughts, right? Knowing that, not knowing of the existence of the external world. Maybe I just fallen asleep by the fire and so on, right? Maybe it's all a dream. And he said, well, if I'm just struck by a thought, then I can think, I'm thinking. And so I can know that I exist. And that doesn't depend on knowledge of the external world. But notice that the line of thought we've just been following blows that up too. Because knowledge of your own existence may just depend on knowledge of yourself as a physical thing. Just as you can't get from thinking about Gödel to knowledge that you're thinking about Gödel without knowing that Gödel exists, you can't get from just being struck by a thought to saying, I'm thinking, without already knowing that you exist. So that classical picture of the mind is still blowing up. And on that bombshell, okay.